Welcome to the STARS program, seniors taking active roles in society. And now, here's your host, ANITA FINLEY.
This is a subject that can be looked at in many ways. Let's look at it as a positive way, because what our lawyer is going to tell you, our guest, Michael Brevda, is going to help you to understand why you have to be an advocate. And when you're an advocate, you will understand a lot more about when your loved one is in either a nursing home or the hospital or even at home with care. You can't expect people to be with them one-on-one, but as a lawyer, Michael sees some ghastly things, and then some things he understands they are not ghastly, they're just life. But he has to protect that person who can't protect him or herself. And that's why we had him on the show. He's going to educate you. So thanks for being here, Michael.
Thank you for having me, Anita. I appreciate it.
Well, this is a big subject, and it's so nice to have someone with a positive note empowering the seniors and what to do in case something does go wrong. And I'm just going to let you talk, and I say one more thing. The older adults, if they have someone in their home and they're being mistreated, they're so afraid now that if they say anything, they're going to be attacked or their food will be poisoned or something. I mean, it's horrible. So that's really who you're dealing with.
Absolutely. I mean, we represent a variety of what I would call vulnerable adults. These are folks that can't perform their ADLs, their activities of daily living. So they're dependent on whether it's at home, like a home health aide, or in a facility. They're dependent on these caregivers to live, to eat, to shower, to bathe, to ambulate, to walk. So there is absolutely a fear, whether it's justified or not is, always a question, but there's always a fear of retribution if they speak out. But that's why, I applaud you and your show for having this topic discussed, because there are a variety of government agencies that are there to protect vulnerable seniors if they feel like they're being abused or neglected. And the calls are anonymous. The investigations are random. And you can initiate that by calling the state of Florida at 1-800-96-ABUSE, like ABUSE. And that's whether it's at home, in a nursing home, in a hospital, in an assisted living facility. So I think that's very important for the listeners to write that down, just in case they ever need it. 1-800-96-ABUSE.
So let's talk about empowering the seniors. What do you suggest that people do? Let's say they go let's just take a nursing home. So now they're there. They're there because they're pretty sick. And hopefully they have family members or close friends. Not everyone does who lives here. If they're listening now, what should they be watching out for? What should they do? When would they want to call you? And what do you do?
Sure.
A lot of stuff.
A lot of questions, and I'll try to unpack them in order to the extent that my memory allows me to remember what you asked me. The first thing is, what should they be doing? And that's kind of a two-part answer. The first is if the resident is alert and oriented, if they know what's going on, they don't suffer from Alzheimer's or dementia, they need to pay attention to the care that they're receiving. And more importantly, even if it's a minute deficiency, even if it's something small that they feel like they're not getting, that they should be getting, they need to voice their concerns. They need to voice their concerns to the CNAs that are providing the day-to-day care. They need to voice their concerns to the director of nursing, who's kind of the top of the pyramid in terms of the clinical side of these facilities. And if they still don't get anywhere, they need to speak with an outside medical doctor. And when I say outside medical doctor, you're nodding your head. I'm not referring to the doctor that the facility provides you. I'm talking about the primary care physician that you've seen for the past 4 years before you were in the facility. And if that really doesn't get the ball rolling in terms of better care, you should report them to the state at that 1-800-96-ABUSE number that we were talking about. The second part of that answer is from a caregiver perspective, from a kid, from a spouse, whoever it is. Assuming that your loved one is not alert and oriented, if they are not able to voice concerns with their care because of their underlying physical or mental condition, it's on the kid or the spouse to really check in and make sure that things are on the up and up in the nursing home. Now, how do you do that? The best is, like we talked about off the air, random visits. That means not going every Tuesday after 3 p.m. when staff knows, okay, Anita's coming to check on mom. You show up at Tuesday at 3 p.m. one day, show up at Wednesday at 10 a.m. the next. If your visits are random and sporadic, they never know when you're coming. That way, they typically will keep your loved one clean. They'll keep them well fed. They'll keep them in and out of the bed and chair as ordered, as opposed to just letting them sit in the same position for hours and hours and hours at a time.
You're really hitting it on the head.
Well, it is, unfortunately, I wish that it wasn't such a reoccurring tragedy, but it is. We see the same care deficiencies in each one of these elder abuse cases that we handle at the firm. And just to kind of finish my thought, for kids that might be listening that are out of area, if the kids live up north and mom or dad is in a facility down here, gosh, what can we do? Because we can't go check in at a 10 a.m. Tuesday random check-in. So what I would recommend is find a friend, and if you have to, pay somebody just to go and check in and see, is mom clean? Has she been eating her food? Has she been bathed? Is her skin intact? Does she have any bruises, any bumps on her face that would indicate that she's suffering falls? Just that randomization of somebody that's interested, that's not affiliated with the nursing home. That one serves as a check and balance for the nursing home.
Michael, I love what you just said, and I will just tell you something,
Sure.
And maybe you can figure this one out. There are geriatric care managers, as you know, and they are perfect for people who don't have the loved ones down here, or even if they do, who don't really know how to put it all together. And yet I constantly hear from them, it's too expensive. They want to charge me $100, they want to charge me $200. But they are the eyes and ears of what you need, especially if you don't live here, to have them be that person. And I don't understand why they won't pay the money.
I would, and you know this as a gerontologist, Anita, but I would highly recommend that if you don't have family members or somebody, even a neighbor, a friend that could go and check in on mom or dad in the facility, you need to hire a care manager just to randomly go in and make sure that things are being done that need to be done to provide for their well-being.
And of course, people aren't in nursing homes because they can manage their own life.
Sure.
They're really there at the mercy of who is ever there. Now, this is the other thing, that a lot of the people who are the caregivers, the people who are the CNAs or even the nurses, they really do want to do a good job. But if there aren't enough people there to help them, they can't. And so I think people go into these whether it's the institutions, wherever it is, with a misnomer. They don't really understand what happens. In fact, it happens in assisted living. People think assisted living means I'm going to have someone there with my mother all the time. They may get 20 minutes in the morning, they may get an hour later on, and then another hour. This isn't like being at your home with a caregiver there constantly. People do not understand that.
And I'm glad you brought that up, because I was asked, speaking to a panel of lawyers in more of a legal context, much drier, but I was asked about what I see as the new emerging problem with long-term care litigation. And, everyone is so focused on nursing home abuse, which is good, and that's, the primary focus of my law firm. But what we are seeing is this growth, this unprecedented growth and surge in the population of assisted living facilities. And the reason being is there is such a negative stigma attached with nursing homes. We hear parents joke all the time with their kids, oh, please don't put me in a nursing home, when I get older. That has that negative societal stigma to it. ALFs, the assisted living facility industry, is wise to this, and they have marketed to this exact fact. So what we're seeing more and more is we see a case where we have a resident with advanced dementia, unsteady gait, forgets their limitation but tries to walk without assistance, suffers 5, 6, 7, 8, 11 falls in the assisted living facility. That is not a proper candidate for assisted living. Every expert would agree. You have to send that patient out to a higher care facility like a long-term care hospital or a skilled nursing facility. But what we see is this marketing wing of the ALF saying, no, keep mom in-house. We'll put her in memory care. And what we see is these ALFs, very savvy ALF corporations that are essentially wearing the hat of a nursing home, promising the moon. And then on fall number 11, when God forbid mom breaks her hip or suffers a subdural hematoma brain bleed, and they deal with me, and they get a letter of representation from the senior justice law firm saying, what the heck were you keeping her in-house for? They throw their hands up and they say, no, we're an ALF. We're basically a landlord-tenant relationship. That is a huge problem that is not being addressed by our legislators in Tallahassee.
Because the assisted living, the whole name, I'm going to assist you in your life. And I saw that because I've been doing this a long time, and I remember that when it must have been 30 years ago, we had a lot of developers said, gee, I could, especially people who are in the hotel business. I'll even use the Marriott because I love the Marriott. And what they said, gee, heads in beds, we can get a lot of people in there and we can charge them this much. And that was independent living. And that was perfect. But they weren't getting enough people in independent living. And it was obvious people in their 60s and 70s didn't want to go and live in an institutional. But when they went in, the Marriott did a beautiful job, and they were giving them the lavish food and lavish. I mean, I used to speak there every month, and I remember what they were doing. But then people started getting a little bit sicker, and they needed more care. And the Marriott is such a high-type company, they said, wait, we got to get out of this. This is not what we thought it was going to be. And then in comes now, I won't mention the other people, but there are other companies that come in and they do all the assisted living care. Everything changed. The people who did live there and were used to all this fine stuff, they started leaving because they weren't getting it anymore, because it's a business and every bed represents a certain amount of money. Now, the reason I mention this is because they took places that were really for independent living. All of a sudden, it's assisted living without the kinds of things that should have been if they were built. I mean, there are some companies now that built just for assisted living, beautiful jobs,
Sure.
Small little pods, and they do a great job. This wasn't what was happening. It was like an afterthought. All right, let's just put this wing on, which is assisted living. And after looking at all this, I said, well, how are they going to take care of it? Well, we'll have level 1, level 2, level 3, level 4. When my mother went to a very nice independent living facility in Broward County, and she was happy until she fell. And then they wanted to put her into this little wing. So we didn't let that happen. We brought her home. We had around-the-clock, live-in people. And I knew by going there all the time that my mother was in a better shape. So I've really run the gamut. Even though I think that there's a market for independent living, there's a market for assisted living, but people have to be advocates and watch.
Absolutely. And the converse to that is there needs to be a certain degree of personal responsibility on the family, checking in, making sure everything's okay with mom or dad. But let's not lose sight that these are lay people. These are not, you are a retired gerontologist. You know the intricacies of this industry, whereas the average person trusts the man or the woman in the white lab coat to do the right thing. I think there needs to be a more stringent duty on the industry, the assisted living facility and the skilled nursing facility industry, to not be able to market this illusion of safety, saying, don't worry about mom's repetitive falls. We'll put her in this memory care unit. Like you said, we'll bump her up to a level 4 resident. We'll charge her through the roof, and I promise you we'll keep an eye on her. When in actuality, they're still just an ALF. They're not providing the level of care that resident needs. So I think there needs to be more accountability from our legislature in Tallahassee to enforce regulations on this kind of emerging ALF, wild west, unregulated industry that we're seeing proliferate across Florida.
Or more humanism.
Sure.
For someone who is running these places, if it's a corporation, it's hard to get that mom and pop feeling. But there are mom and pop organizations who really do understand, and they're really in the business for the right reason. They want to, of course, they want to make money, but they're willing to take these 10 people that live in their home and watch them and take care of them. So there is some good, there's some bad, but I think it is an industry that's going to grow like crazy. We know that. But I think there are some inventions that haven't been thought yet. There are some new things that are coming up. I mean, I do so much reading on what's going to happen now to the baby boomers. And I've said to some of my friends, I don't really want to go to a big institution. But 5 of us, let's just get a big house. Let's get a manager. Let's figure out how we do it. And then as one of us gets sicker, we get somebody a little bit better and, provide driving chauffeurs and all. There are new ways that are going to evolve. I know that because what's there now is really, I think, old-fashioned and dangerous.
There's no doubt that there's some cutting-edge technology that could be a total game changer in long-term care. I told you I was in a hospital today taking depositions of nurses, and I had to get out of the way because there was a little robot coming down the hall.
With medicine. I know it's great,
medicine.
Right?
I mean, there goes the med tech, and now
Right.
you've got this exact robotic machine that's dispersing meds. I mean, who'd have thunk it 10 years ago that you're going to be ducking and dodging robots in hospitals? But sure, there is definitely a emergence of technology that could alleviate a lot of these problems. But at the end of the day, we know we're dealing with a vulnerable patient population in nursing homes, hospitals, ALFs. We know that they require more care and more attention than you or I would. And at the end of the day, the onus is really on the corporate owners, like you said, to budget the appropriate amount of money to either use that technology or hire enough staff to provide for the residents that they have in-house.
And I say something to doctors as well as nurses. If you don't like people and you're not willing to put up with a lot of things, get out of the business.
Sure.
Because I have seen doctors like that. And after 15 minutes, I just want to leave and say, get out of the business. You're not a doctor. The same thing with the nurses in these places. I mean, they're so involved with, maybe it's the corporation's fault. They have to show everything. They have to account what they did at 6 o'clock, at 8 o'clock, and they have no time for the patients. So there's a lot that has to be turned over.
Yeah, that is at the root of most of our nursing home abuse cases that we handle. When you get to the root cause of why, whether it was a bed sore, a fall, a medication error, dehydration, malnutrition, wrongful death, whatever the ailment, the injury was, when you get to the root cause of why it happened, it's usually there weren't enough hands on deck. And like you alluded to earlier, there's a head in every bed. When you look at some of these corporate-run nursing homes, if you walked into the lobby, and I know that you mentioned you have, I mean, you're blown away. There's marble and granite and crystal chandeliers, and you think, holy cow, I would live here. Yeah. I mean, this is beautiful. What you don't see is you don't see that locked dementia ward on floor 3 where you've got 15 high-acuity residents and there's 2 overworked, undertrained nurses that are scrambling like chickens with no heads. So it's again, it all goes back to the marketing of these places, which is unfortunately brilliant in selling you this illusion of safety. So we need more staff at these facilities in order to prevent nursing home negligence.
Well, Michael Brevda, Senior Justice Law Firm, I am so glad that you're here doing this because it's not that I'm against nursing homes. I have a lot of them. Of course, they've advertised. I have the assisted living organizations. I have a lot of that. And all it really requires is if we could put them in the bed, the corporate manager in the bed, and let them get the attention, I think they would understand it. But they're not there. This has become such a lucrative business, unfortunately, and so we have to do something about it. But let me give people a way to get you. So if you would like to, I guess that you talk to someone on a complimentary basis if they think that they have something, an injury. So the phone number to call is 561-717-0817. Again, remember, this is Pencil Talk Radio. It's 561-717-0817. And you can also, let's see, we do, seniorjustice.com. Go on his website. And the one thing that is so obvious is that this is called malpractice. We haven't really said that word, but just like if you're in a car accident and you're not being treated right, you go get a lawyer. Well, here's someone in a bed who's not being treated right, you may have to go get a lawyer.
Yeah.
It's the same kind of thing, right? I mean, we hope that you can take care of something before.
And that is something that never ceases to amaze me. You know, we all live here in South Florida. We see the billboards for car accidents and slip and falls. Whether you want to or not, if God forbid you get into a car accident, you know you could bring a claim. You're acutely aware because of all that marketing that you can bring a car accident lawsuit. What I encounter in my clients is such hesitancy and uncertainty in some of the most egregious cases of elder abuse. They call me and they say, you know, mom developed a dinner plate sized bed sore on her backside, but she was old. Is that something that you'd be able to help us with? And I think, holy cow, these people have no idea what's going on. And unfortunately, like we talked about before, to the nursing home owners, to those corporate owners that are 8 states away in a corporate boardroom that are not clinicians, they make care decisions and staffing decisions based on the bottom line. And I don't fault them for that. They're a corporation. They're there to make money. The only way we can impact change against these larger corporate chains is, unfortunately, to take their money for wrongful injury. That is the only resolution that will show up on their radar. An angry letter isn't going to cut it to a 50 facility corporate chain. You have to impact their bottom line. And if you do that, the hope is that next time the injury or the wrongful death won't happen.
They have to have, it's really having more people. And as a lawyer, I'm sure there are times where you would like to have more law clerks
of course
working for you.
I'd like to be cloned.
Of course. Well, we all feel that. But this is life and death. This is not, I'm going to stay up later, I'm going to get something. This is a person with a heart beating, with so much there, and they need to have more attention. And so, yes, maybe the ratio now is 1 to 10 in a very good place. Maybe it needs to be 1 to 5, and you have to pay it. If you're going to be in the business, I think a lot of lawsuits would not occur if there were more people.
I agree.
Do you agree?
I agree
It's really
wholeheartedly.
the population.
And I wouldn't even be so bold as to suggest a across the board, X to Y ratio of staff to patients. What I would suggest is who foots the bill for 90% of the care in nursing homes? It's the taxpayer. It's Medicare and Medicaid. So why don't we see what the facility is being paid to care for the resident and tether that to the staffing numbers?
That's excellent. I had not thought about that.
Well, I can tell you that in just about every understaffing case that we encounter as nursing home abuse attorneys, what they ask for to get reimbursed, what they actually receive for reimbursement, is much higher than the actual allocation of money to patient care. So we know what's happening.
Right.
They're profiting. They're taking all the profits and they're not recycling it into the care. That's the issue.
Something you also brought up about every facility has a medical director, not a medical director, a physician. And that physician actually works for that corporation in a sense, that they're hired by them.
Yes and no.
And sometimes, though, I think you have to have a second opinion.
Oh,
and we haven't talked about second opinions. And even, I think, second opinions, if something's not working well for your mother or father, find someone else and get a second opinion.
Do I have time to
Yes,
share a brief anecdote?
Yes.
Okay. The case that I'm here, the reason I'm in a suit today, the reason I was taking depositions earlier, an older woman, advanced Alzheimer's, could not communicate, was bedbound, couldn't move on her own, was in a facility here in Palm Beach County, and had bruising to her upper thigh on her right side. Family comes, ask questions. The nurses minimize it and say, "Oh, she has ecchymotic skin. It's because she's old and she's susceptible because of circulatory issues. Don't worry about it. She's fine." A couple days go by. The kids are asking questions. It seems like she's in pain. She's moaning. She's she's grabbing towards that area. I'm pretty, I'm concerned. Is there anything that we can do? So they bring in their in-house doctor. Doctor looks at it and says, "Oh yeah, it's a blood flow thing, and she has blood clots, and there's some underlying condition there, and not a big deal. Don't worry about it. We'll give her some painkillers. It'll be fine." And this family, and these are not folks that are doctors or nurses. These are lay people. Thank goodness that they had the chutzpah to dig deep and call an outside provider, because they did, and you're nodding your head because you know where I'm going. She had a traumatically induced fracture. And let's think about that even bigger picture, okay? She can't talk. She can't walk. She can't even reposition herself in bed. She has a traumatic fracture of her tib and fib in her leg. How did that happen? She can't walk. That means somebody either beat her or dropped her during a transfer, and instead of doing the right thing and reporting the injury, they stuffed her back in bed. So that's a perfect example, which is, the case I was working on today.
I'm glad you brought that up.
Well, it's a perfect example of digging deep and saying, you know what, I need to take a step and bring in an outside medical provider just to make sure that my concerns are not justified.
And Michael, I talk to people about doing this, not even in a nursing home. If you have you have a physician and you have a particular illness, go to a second one. Go find out what it is. Go to a third. And it's amazing how it changes one to the other. And that's good. It's not a bad thing. It's because everybody gets together and says, well, maybe it's not that. Maybe it's this. So, Michael, this has been great. I'm glad we're really doing this. And I know that you're a kind person and you're trying to get down to the root of all the problems. And I want to thank you very much. Let's, if you need him, it's 561-717-0817, or go to his website, seniorjustice.com. Thanks very much for being here.
Thank you for shedding light on such an important issue. I really appreciate it.